Hello. I'm going to tell you a story of my return to church. It was extremely divinely guided, and it's just a testimony, but I feel like I've been putting it off, and now I'm going to tell you. So, here goes. Um, it started out in 2013. My husband and I had been attending a church, which I'm going to call the East Church. And we had been attending this church for maybe close to 10 years. Now, not quite, but close to it. When we first started there, it was great. It was wonderful. You know, we went to Bible groups, Sunday school class, different things, different events, and I really liked it. Met really good friends. In fact, our best friends are from there. And so that was the way it was for several years. And then God, like most of you, God started waking me up. And a lot of times He started waking us up in 2012, and for me it was the same way. And for some reason, I did not look forward to Christmas that year in 2012 like I usually did. I didn't know why, because I would celebrate Christmas for the entire month of October or December. But like I said, He was waking me up. It just didn't seem right. For some reason, having all that decorations and all that just didn't seem right. Anyway, that's not my purpose here. My purpose is to talk about church, but I wanted to explain to you that God was changing me, but He was taking His time because He knows what's best for each one of us. He knows the perfect path for us. So don't ever feel like you've made a wrong step because God already knew what you were going to do in advance, right? So 2013 comes along, and I'm being woke up more and more. I'm in forums, I'm connecting with people, learning about the transformation. And when Pentecost came in 2013, my preacher didn't bring it up at all. And I was starting to become just a little concerned because he always preached good, 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 wonderful things. And then he finally had, and he didn't even mention Pentecost, and I was upset about that because if nothing else, that's the birth of the quote church, right? So you would thought that would have been brought up, but then a couple months we're still going. He decides to have a sermon on good versus evil. Okay, so I'm like, okay, this is it. Now, my husband knew I had been getting upset with it. He knew I had been waking up. God did this in a variety of ways, and every time something new would happen, I'd tell my husband, who was not waking up. He wasn't interested in all the things I was learning. He was happy just going to church and doing his thing. Okay. Now, my husband and I have a great relationship. Don't get me wrong. God's paired us up together, and there's a reason for that. And so, but I'm just kind of telling you because I know many of you struggle with spouses or loved ones that, when you have a problem with what you hear the preacher says or someone on TV or online, it bothers you. You mention it to someone and they're like, what? No, and so you kind of keep closed mouth. You don't bring it up again. So, being that my husband and I have been married almost 4 decades, I tell him everything. So I was telling him about all this. So the preacher has this sermon about good versus evil, and he talks about Satan initially. I heard the name Satan one time, and I'm like, okay, this is great. I want to hear him explain to people because what bothers me about these churches are they do spread the love of God, the love of Jesus, and how you can be saved. But they usually do not carry it forward. They don't give you mentors or discipleship and tell you how to start becoming stronger in your faith and cementing that relationship. They also don't tell you that a lot of the problems in this world are caused by Satan, and that those problems also, you know, have a domino effect into your life. And that's why bad things happen to us and bad things happen to good people. It's all about evil in this world and wickedness, and how Satan is the instigator of everything evil and wicked. And that's not coming across in today's churches for the most part. I know you guys know what I'm talking about, so I'm not going to stay on that subject. So that was happening in my church. And there was one other sermon, which if you've been with me very long, you know I give things three red flags before I drop them. So there was Pentecost, there was the good versus evil, and I only heard about Satan once. And then the third one was he was going to talk all about Revelation. The sermons were going to be about the books of Revelation or the book of Revelation. So he started chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and he quit. He stopped after that. And I read about that online, that preachers will stop after that, but I thought, no, you can't stop. It's in the Bible. But by golly, he did stop, and that was it. That was the last straw for me. So I told my husband, I'm quitting. This guy isn't teaching us right, and I'm quitting. I want to learn from God differently. So I started staying home, and I would, like the rest of you, being woke up, we learned online from people that have visions and dreams and prophecies, words from the Lord, Rhema words. We receive them ourselves. I learned to hear God on October 3rd, 2013, and I have loved every minute of it. I'm so glad I did. But that ability is available for every single child of God, because what father doesn't want their child to hear them, right? So God will speak to you, and there's a way to learn that. It's so simple, it's not even funny. In fact, I'm going to put a link in my description box because that was so important to me. Okay, so moving on. My husband stayed going to church every Sunday for about a year or so, and then he quit going as well, which I'm not surprised. And our best friends would try to bring us back. They talked to me. He was a head elder, and so they tried everything, and I just kept telling them that it's the preacher. Okay, so they got the preacher decided to quit the church. He was moving on. You know how preachers do, and they were interviewing new preachers, and so I was at this point. It was just like the last one or two of my services before I was quitting for good, and this gentleman, I'm going to call John, came in and preached as a practice, and I'm like, oh, that guy knows what he's talking about. He absolutely knows everything to talk to a church. He was a great preacher, okay? And he worked part-time. He traveled a lot. He wasn't like the perfect preacher, that can only do 24/7. So I told my friend, the head elder, who was on this committee, to hire the preacher. I said, that's your guy. That's the man you need to hire, John. You need to hire him. And so he's like, okay, well, I'll take that into consideration, blah, blah, blah. And they did not hire him. And so that was that. Okay, now that was the last straw. Okay. So because everything's important in this process. So they did not hire John. I said, forget it. I'm not going anymore. I don't feel led to look for another church. I pray constantly to God, show me what to do, and I did not feel led to go to another church. So for many years, my husband and I, on Sunday mornings, we had communion, we'd turn on Charles Stanley, and that's who we watched. And I learned a lot from him, but at the same time, I continued with my website, The Call of the Bride, and just, went with the flow. I did not feel called by God to go back to any church. I just continued what I was doing, and I kept praying all the time, God, if you want me to go to church, you're going to have to send me something in the mail or hit me on the head, because I need to know what to do. I only want to do what you want me to do. So, okay, this went on until this year, 2019. Okay, so as many of you know, my daughter passed away in February after a long illness with cancer. It's just devastating to my husband and myself. As you can imagine, she's our only child. We don't have any grandchildren. It's just him and me. And so I knew then it was time for me to quit my job. I felt led by the Lord to stay home and to do, again, whatever he wanted me to do, but it was time for rest. That's the big word I got in my head, was rest. So I quit my job, and they actually brought back the woman who I had replaced 10 years previously. It was amazing. So I was very happy with her, training her. So now I'm home for a couple months. I start knitting for a charity, and which is just fun. And I'm reading books. I'm catching up on reading. I'm reading the websites and posting words and things like that. And then I get a call in July that the woman that I had replaced she was in the hospital for a couple days. And so checks, I worked in accounting. Checks need to be run every week. So they called and asked me to come back for just a couple days, couple weeks, and to take care of that. And I prayed about it, and I knew that God wanted me to do this. So sure enough, I went back and went for a couple days, and that was one way. And I knew, the minute I knew I was supposed to go was because God had something to show me. God had something for me to do. It's part of my path. So I'm like excited about it, but also looking forward to staying home. Or I shouldn't say stay home. I don't stay home all the time. You have many things to do, but when you are, quote, retired, you can actually get them done during the day instead of being so winded on weekends and nights. And when you're trying to watch a sick loved one, it's just a very, hard time. So I got to speed this up. Okay, so then I came home. So the next week I went 2 more days, and as I went to work, I went past this church, which I'll call the North Church. So I went past it one day and came home, and I just felt led to look that up on the website, but I forgot about it. Then I went to work another day, came back home, saw the church again. Now I had been going past this church for 10 years. Okay, it's on my drive. So I came home a second time, totally forgot about it. And it's like, okay, I'll just look that up. And then, it was gone when I got home. So then that weekend in July, towards the end of July, I went to visit my mother. And my mother lives farther away than the North Church. But I went past there on my way back in order to come home. And I'm like, oh, I got to look that up. I feel like I'm supposed to look that up. So I came home, I looked it up. I actually remembered. And they actually had a sermon of the preacher. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I can hear whether or not he, gets past my red flags. So I started playing the sermon and listening in the room. And my husband walks past, and he comes back, and he's standing in the doorway, and he's listening too. And I said, this is the guy that preaches at the North Church. And he looks at me, and he said, that's John. And I said, what? He goes, yes, that's John who came and preached at the East Church, and then they didn't hire him. They hired someone else. I said, you are kidding me. And he's like, no, that's John. So I sent a text to my elder friend and said, is John the person that the East Church interviewed and then turned down? And he said, yes. And I could not believe it. So immediately we went to the church, the North Church. John was preaching, and I just love it. I go back, I'm attending there. We're attending there every Sunday. And in fact, get this, people, the first Sunday I attended, their total attendance was 144. I know. I am keeping that brochure that shows that, because that's outstanding. That's a confirmation to me. So we're attending on Sundays. I go to the Bible study. I'm baking something for their bake sale, and it's wonderful. So the thing is, I never went back to work to talk to anybody at work. I thought that's what this was all about. I thought that's where God was leading me. That's not the case at all. He said, no, it's time to go to church. And he has confirmed that to me in a multiple of ways. And I know at some point with that church, there will be things that happen, and it's the transformation comes about, and that I will go out and do whatever it is I'm supposed to do, but that church will be part of it. And so I wanted to tell you this story to encourage you to, when you trust God to provide every need and to show you what to do, he will. You just have to be patient and know that everything that happens to you, if you believe in God and are trusting him, it is all for his purpose, and the plan is perfect. Just like everything that's going on right now in the news and the politics and all this, it's all for God's glory in the end, and that's what we have to believe. And so I hope you enjoyed this story. I still love living it out, and God bless every one of you, and I hope to see you soon.